and certifications, Loren hosts a globally recognized live streaming podcast, This Week in Hospitality Marketing, reaching thousands each week in over 28 countries for over 5 years now. So without any other delay, please give me a very warm welcome to Loren to begin.
Hi everyone. Okay, so that you all know, everyone that is not here is going to regret that they aren't here, because this room should be actually standing room only. This, of all contexts, I mean, although content today has been phenomenal in many categories, the cybersecurity issues that we're facing as an industry are profound. And we have an amazing array of professionals that are going to tell us exactly, from the hotelier and ownership perspective, the value proposition that cybersecurity attention now should give us, rather than in future tense. Because, as we said in some of the promotions and so forth, most of the people that get hacked, or the industries that are held hostage, don't even know it until it happens. And that's because of lack of preparation of what we're about to discuss today. I am in every attempt going to be as quiet as possible, and since we have a small group, we truly want to solicit and perpetual dialogue. This isn't a wait until the end to ask a question. As was pointed out, there is a microphone into the middle of the room, since there's not a crowd to crawl through. It's an easy one. If you have a question, simply stand up to the microphone. We will pause and address what concern or question you have to the context of the conversation. We do want to try to keep it focused today on the hotelier side, not on the consumer side. There's enough discussion that this could be an all-day event, should we choose to make it so. So as we go along with the dialogue, if something comes up that you have a question or comment towards, then please just walk up to the microphone, and since it is a relatively small room, there's a few of us, if that's too short of an opportunity, then just raise your hand and we'll grab you, okay? So that in mind, I'd like to make sure that rather than me try to introduce people that I have had just the recent pleasure of getting to know, I'd much rather go down the list and let them introduce themselves, their companies, their roles and responsibilities, and the value proposition of today's conversation. And with that,
hello everyone, my name is Kevin Thomas. I work at Independent Security Evaluators, also known as ISE. I work as a client success manager. Now what that means is I'm a client advocate, and for the customers that we have, I work directly with them in a consulting type role. I travel almost 75% of the time, and when I travel, I'm usually on client site and making sure that they're happy with our engagement, and I'm answering all of their questions when it comes to security and making sure that they're ahead of the game.
Yeah, I'm Pitt. I'm with the network support company. I've been with them for over 20 years now in a lot of different roles, from being a technical resource early in my career to bringing our managed services offerings to market, and now working a lot with cybersecurity. And we work a lot with hospitality, both in hotels and in country clubs. So really familiar with this topic and look forward to talking to you guys today.
I'm Brandi Patterson. I work as the Senior Vice President of Global Software Applications. We do business in SurferQuest. That is a company that provides secure business center software and guest engagement solutions. And I got into this because I want to not only protect the guests, but also protect the hoteliers and be able to speak with them about their liabilities and the conversations that they should be having, not only with the networking side, but also with the providers of software as well.
to that end, we agreed that there's a lot of primary concerns that are for hoteliers. One, the first one was about awareness, about our ability to actually understand the threats that exist for our industry. And to that end, we have had some opinions as to the methodology associated with that. I'll jump to Brandi first, only because we went this way, so we'll go this way back, and we'll jump in and please interrupt each other as we go along as we want to add points to this. But from a position of where to start from, where if a hotelier wants to start being aware of what they should be doing, should they be starting with?
They should start with training of their staff on the things to look for as far as their own passwords, the way that they think about cybersecurity. And again, not necessarily taking it from the guest perspective, but hoteliers, they have questions that they should be asking anyone who provides their networking, anyone who provides their software, as to how you do your coding, what types of protocols you have in place just in case something were to go wrong. So being able to have that constant dialogue back and forth is something that is absolutely critical.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. When we look at the cyber threats today, we see that the users inside companies, the employees of the hotels are the ones that are going to be attacked the most. They're constantly being phished with emails and links that for them to click on and so on. So having them trained to be able to identify those things is one of the best defensive mechanisms. Sometimes we say your employees and your staff could either be your biggest weakness or your best cybersecurity asset. And training them is the way to get them to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and adding on to what Buddy was saying about your staff being the weakest link, sometimes that is very much the case. And with what Brandi was saying about training, it's important that you train them and do it over and over again as well. And so in the hotel staff might have a high turnover rate. And when it comes to that turnover rate, making sure that those people that are new to the staff are being trained right when they get started is super important. And I think with adding on to what Buddy was saying about the weakest link, they also need to be trained on social engineering, which is definitely a big topic that is of concern to people. And there have been many cases where that has been pinpoint of breach.
With it being the fact that we have the liberty to discuss whatever we'd like to. You all are in the business, as you say, you're actually in the field. You are the rubber meets the road when it comes to these processes and procedures. And to that end, what are some examples of, wow, can't believe you did that? Or things that you've seen happen based on the fact that of this blind eye, as it were, to your staff, being aware of the threats that are available to the business that they're working for. Have you seen when you're out doing these things?
Something super simple is network segregation. So when at a hotel site, making sure that there are two different Wi-Fis that are segregated between the guest network and the staff network. So the staff one is what holds all the user information. When you go and check into a hotel, that's the network that the staff is connected to. And then the other one being the guest network, which is where they stream Netflix and use all of that. So if someone who is staying at the hotel is able to get into the same network where all the user information is being stored, then that is a huge threat to your own facility.
Yeah, I could add on to that a little bit too. On the guest side, something we also like to do is enable endpoint isolation on the guest network. So that way, one guest can't see traffic or anything that another guest is doing. And that's a way that you can help keep your guests secure as well. So not only do you want to segment them from your back office network, but also protect them from each other as well.
And just adding on to that point, I recently stayed at an Ascend property in Allentown. They were phenomenal with telling us what network in order to get on, so that way there wasn't any confusion. But again, that goes back to that point of training, that this is something that you should be using in order to greet your guests. It used to be that those things were actually written on the back of cards, but you don't see that as much anymore. So being able to pinpoint the importance of that interaction with your guests, that you need to be on this network for this reason, is very important as well.
Since we have a small group, and you always have to adapt to the fact that you have to talk to either a big pile of people or a few people, let's do it with hands. Is just plugging in, do you allow your staff, if you're working in a property, do you allow your staff the ability to plug in USBs? Is it a policy that's written down? That's good. Why is that the case? Anyone want to venture? Please, go ahead. Huawei is everywhere. No. It is very challenging for that. And even good intents can go wrong. So yes, it's a great policy to have if you don't have it. And that goes to one end that we've all discussed, is policies, protocols, things that are associated with, that's in an SOP. What are some suggestions that you have, and whoever wants to go first, we don't need to keep going back and forth, but just, what are some policies that you should think that, from your experiences, need to be in place in a Bible on a shelf? What do you think should be in place?
I could start with that. I think some of the most important policies out there are things like having a password policy. You have to have a passwords be constructed a certain way with special characters and so on, the longer the better. But then not only having the policy written and accepted so that everyone understands it, but then to put the technical controls in place to actually enforce it. Those are, password policy is a given. That's one of those ones you just have to have. Some other ones would be like acceptable use policies. Explain to people what they're allowed to do on the computer and what they're not allowed to do. And then put in things like content filtering and DNS filtering or other technical controls to prevent them from doing things that they're not supposed to do, or at least try to curb that. And there's I could probably talk about this for a half an hour. So.
We all agreed to this, that we had plenty of conversation when it came to this topic, but please go ahead.
Well, again, putting on with your password policy, how often do you change your passwords? Again, making sure that they are not easy for a hacker to just go ahead and hit a few keys and there you go, you have a breach. And also pointing more to who has access to these kinds of things. Do you have a pinpoint person that is able to take guest information, make sure that it is encrypted and secure, and that no other person has any type of access to it? So being able to have that as a policy in place is very important.
Yeah, and adding on to that, what Loren was saying with having this in a book and on a shelf, that's great. But making sure that you're audited for this on a certain cadence through every year, or whether it's multiple times a year, is super important as well. Because having everything written down is great, but if it's just sitting on a shelf the entire time, then and it's not enacted and looked upon, then that would be a huge missed opportunity to make sure that your network is secure and making sure the facility is also secure. So yeah, that's definitely something that needs to be taken care of as well.
One of the enjoyments of when you get the opportunity to do this with the experts such as this caliber is that you get the open dialogue of what it is that you want to discuss. And one of the fun points about this is that we had very opinions as to the frequency of doing things like this and what should be included with these things, or what are the triggers for doing these things such as audits and so forth. And out of that, we had different opinions, not that we disagreed that it hadn't to be done, but the reasons that caused those triggers to have happened to this, the frequency necessary to it. Because as with all of us that we've been operating hotels, you can burden your staff too much with just too much protocol, too many things to do, too many matchsticks to count. But by the same token, there's great causes for why those things happen. You have the opinion that certain triggers should happen. And then Brandi, I'll jump over to you afterwards as to what you consider to be your triggers to why the frequency should be what it is. Please.
So for me, the way I see things is, well, for the way that myself and ISC, Independent Security Evaluators, see things is, we should assess, or we should have triggers, and on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis, assess how many changes have been implemented, if any, and if there's new hardware implemented into a new network or a new facility. And depending on that hardware and what is implemented, there needs to be assessments based on those changes. And so there might be a case where there's not a lot of changes that occurred this half or this quarter, so we can push the assessment to, or if there's no changes that occurred this half or this quarter, so we can push the assessment to the next check-in. And at that check-in, if there's been a change or new hardware implemented, then it is vital that you have that assessed and make sure that the integrity of the network and the security of the facility is kept.
And I was more of the opinion for the once a quarter or even more frequently, just because of the fact that you have so many people, so many things happening, coming in and out, that, well, from where I'm coming from, it's more than signing a contract to, okay, you're going to provide the networking, you're going to provide the software, but being able to put that type of protocol in place and have it done frequently so that people are used to doing it. So that way, as soon as you set that precedent is always that precedent, and you can go ahead and you can do it more or less. Again, putting on to Kevin's point, depending on if you have changes in your hardware or other network type of changes, but being able to put it in as, you know, more than twice a year or even once per year, again, that becomes critical in order to make sure that everything is as safe as you can make it, as much as you can take reasonable protocols in order to not only keep your guests safe, but also keep your reputation safe.
I would like to ask, what is it you used to do?
Well, here we go. I actually came out of college as a psychology and education major. That ended up falling into the lovely world of cybersecurity and software. So again, it doesn't necessarily make a difference where you start out. It's just a journey of where you end up.
I like the point that you made in one of our earlier discussions. It's an operant conditioning that you're creating. maybe the frequency may be a little overtured at first, but the repetition of value gets integrated into becomes part of the culture, as we hear so often in previous presentations.
Absolutely.
The culture is so critical that yes, it's a burdensome frequency, maybe a little overbearing at first, but that adoption that that's just the way it is a part of the protocol of persistence.
Sure, yeah, I think it's, the frequency I think is debatable, and I don't think that black and white have a right or wrong in one way, but I think it's important to understand why we want to do these things. And it's really comes down to when we put these systems in place and we set them up a certain way, there's a lot of reasons for them to change. And what we're really trying to do is capture, is there a vulnerable piece in this before cyber criminals do, because they're testing it just as well. So if we can catch it first, we can close down those vulnerabilities and keep our network secure.
It's all about being proactive, because once you've been breached, it becomes a very reactive sort of thing, like an uh-oh kind of thing. You want to avoid that as much as possible.
I'm going to make this statement just so you watch your faces, because I'm reverting to questions that was pretty much a consensus between all of you. But I have antivirus software. What's the problem?
So antivirus software, it's a lot of times definition based. And what we mean by virus definitions, and I just kind of explained that piece a little bit, is that 10 years ago we used to find pieces of malware in the wild on the internet somewhere. And we would say, okay, well, let's identify that. So we would do basically a digital thumbprint of that file. And we would say this is a hash or a definition. We would stuff it in this database. But then antivirus software would sit and look at your hard drive and look for that exact match and say, oh, we found a threat that we found somewhere else, and it can compare it easily. Today, every single piece of malware is unique. So as a virus gets deployed into your network and it's on 50 different machines, every single one of those deployments is going to look unique. And so antivirus software has now changed to look at behavioral based. And a lot of times you'll hear this next gen or artificial intelligence. And what that's really doing is it's saying, okay, what is this application trying to do? And should I step in and try to intercept its activity? And that's a much harder thing to do than to compare an exact thumbprint to something else that's known. So that's why antivirus software doesn't work as well. We have to go through a lot of these other methods and layers of protection to keep us safe.
Anything additional? Other than the scrunchy faces?
I definitely think Buddy summarized that very well. The main point that I always bring up to clients when asked about antivirus software is that it can only identify what it knows. But every single day, hackers are changing. They're spending 24 hours a day to this craft, and they're changing things, and they're trying to bypass the antivirus software. And so having that is a great, I guess, offense, but hackers can always jump over the fence.
I mean, aren't all just hackers 15-year-old kids that are kids at their parents' garage? Is that there's nobody else, right?
No.
It was another point of contention from our earlier conversations. This is a business. If you don't believe it's a business, you can see it in the news when you see municipalities, businesses shut down because their data is removed or gone. So this is not the perception, as you said, of a static virus that somebody propagated that's been identified by somebody that was a kid looking to just get a thrill out of this. This is a monetization model for people now, and so forth. So. All right, so with that in mind, just what are some of the, again, going back to being in the field, being on the road, handling these things, what are some of the biggest threats that you see to hotels when it comes to primary concerns? To walk out the door today, for those with us, this is what you should make sure you're already doing, regardless of what you do next. What are some of those things?
So the two main things that I would bring up is auditing and training. Training your staff. We've touched on both of these points already, but I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I mean training and certainly that social engineering and phishing and those are certainly the biggest threats across all businesses. And I've seen some really unique ones come out. I don't know if you want to go into any of the stories, but I would agree with you that that's one of the top threats.
And if you go even deeper as far as equipment, what is your protocol to do with equipment that's already outdated and obsolete? How do you dispose of that or make sure that it is cleaned up to the best of your ability to make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands and have information stolen?
What would you say to somebody that is sitting and thinking, hey, look, I have XYZ brand hotel, or it's not me, I'm too small, or this is not a platform that it's all locked up, it's not me, it's on the cloud, it's whatever excuse they want to make to it. What are some of the things that have happened to all of you in that sense that it has happened because of that, or it doesn't make a difference that you're that person or not. I mean, we can answer a question with Marriott and start with. I mean, what are some ways that you would answer that question of, it's not me, this is not something, I run a hotel, this isn't something I should be worried about, I have PMS software that does this and EOS software that does that. What are some of your answers to those kind of, it's not me?
So, all right, so when I run into those questions, I always find that the best way to get the concept that it is on you and it is your responsibility that to get that question or to get that answer across, the best way is always to bring up a story or something that has happened before. One case that might be commonly known is the Erin Andrews case. She was staying at a Marriott hotel in Nashville, and through social engineering, the stalker was able to invade her privacy, and that ended up costing that Nashville Marriott $75 million, and that came from the owner of the hotel. And that was directly due to a social engineering breach where the stalker was calling the front desk and was able to identify which room she was in and ask for the room right next to him. And the person that was staffed there, if they were trained properly, then they might have thought, oh, this is a high priority guest. We shouldn't put anybody in opposite rooms or adjacent rooms. And so that's just one of those situations that come up with training. And usually when I bring up one of these stories, they get that this is on them and it is their responsibility.
And for me, it would be that, again, it is on you, but it is you. The whole thing with that is that hotel is the extension of you. You're the one who's put out the money in order to have wonderful furnishings and create this lovely experience for people. So why would you skip on something that is a part of you? I'm a bit of cross training, and there was a technical call that I took from one of our hotels. They had a guest who put some vacation pictures on the desktop, but with our software, at the end of the session, everything is wiped clean so that there's no trace of you. And again, even if you don't walk out of the session, it still does the same thing. So when I told the general manager that, no, they're not getting these pictures back, he's like, it's not a problem, I will deal with the guests, and this is why we bought the software, in order to make sure that many things like that just don't happen.
I think with a lot of times when we put applications into the cloud, a lot of companies and hotels think that, oh, it's the cloud provider that has a full responsibility. But there's hackers that are out there that are going after these cloud providers as well. So you want to understand, is that data being backed up? Should you have another vendor to back up? You put your email in Office 365. Microsoft may be able to recover it for you for a short period of time, but if you want to and guarantee that you're going to be able to restore your emails, you have to have another provider go into that cloud and back it up to somewhere else. So that's the same with any other cloud provider, whether it's Salesforce or so on. So it's important to understand what's happening to your data and take responsibility for it as a business owner or hotelier.
This is the part where you can take notes, because I'm about to ask each one of you, what is your world of an audit? What is it that you, when you walk in, feel should be done by a hotel in an audit process? Highlights, I mean, obviously we don't want to give away the farm, but what is it you feel should be, okay, walk in, step 1, step 2, step 3, these things must not be missed, these things are optional based on conditions or whatever. We'll start branding and then we'll work our way down, but this is the part where it's like compare the notes, because we probably see a lot of similarities, but what is it you see in an audit process?
As far as that would go, just, okay, types of software you are using, anything that you've seen amiss with the software. Is there somebody on staff that monitors that software each and every day just to, pull any abnormalities out of it? Where do they think that they're coming from, to at least start?
So when I walk into a place, and this is just kind of a habit of mine, but I always look at it as if I'm the hacker and I want to break in. And I look for the weaknesses that I can exploit. So I would look for stuff like, is there a jack in the wall? Are there security cameras? Or what's the physical environment around me? And that's always where I start. And it's usually as you start to investigate, one discovering one thing leads to the next and leads to the next, and that's really the process that I go through. Not to go into too many. I mean, I just talk all day about it.
Oh yeah. Rabbit hole.
But you always look for the easy things that are most likely to be exploited.
And yeah, you both touched on a lot of great points. One thing that ISC does in particular when it comes to the audit process, we try our best to not send the same person to do an audit or do a security assessment. And the reasoning for that is so that there's a fresh pair of eyes. And the same reason that someone at a hotel might ask, why can't we just do this ourselves? Or we have an IT guy, why can't he do the quarterly audit? The reason is because they become numb to the different things that are there, and they might miss something, and it becomes very easy to miss something when it's the same person looking at something over and over. And so in that case, having rotating auditors and changing up who you use might be a good idea too, but if there is a company that already has a system in place where there's different auditors coming in on a quarterly basis, then I think that would be the way to go. So there's definitely checkboxes that you need to take when you look for an auditor for this particular purpose as well.
I'll only add one other comment to it, that I didn't hear the aspect about purging your user base. I often find when I step into any grouping that there is a zombie list of previous accesses that just live and breathe. And for those who have branding, you're paying for that every month to have a zombie list on your branding accesses. So it's an actual dollar amount, not to mention security breach and so forth, which kind of rolls over to a little bit of we wanted to tie this into our conversation about data control, data security, GDPR and CCPA and so forth. And if any acronym that's not understood, please raise a hand. With this in case, we're talking about literally a new layer of responsibility, one that hasn't existed before. Where does this responsibility land? And do you see this as being your data protection officer's responsibility, or a greater, newer role? How do you see this being evolved into our economics ecosystem of a hotel operation?
And again, that's part of the overall conversation as to who should have this role. Who should be in charge of the information that is accessed? Just again, to make sure that it's not being sent out over the wrong type of network as far as your internal controls are concerned.
Yeah, and I'd say if you look at GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulation, it has all these individual rights, and a lot of it is around having your clients, your customers, your guests informed of how you're using their information, how it's being shared, and they have certain rights where they can request it from you. They have a right to ask you to forget them, or a right to erasure. So it creates a lot of compliance-based challenges that you have to be prepared for and ready to deal with as those requests start to come in, because the next thing that happens if you don't comply is they start levying fines. And those could be detrimental. I know some of the larger companies got fined right away. It's just like, Google, I think, was hit with $50 million and so on. And the California Consumer Protection Act is following in that suit. Now, it's still on state legislation, but at some point, I think California and Vermont are the only two states that have anything on the books, and California is going into effect in 2020. But these will eventually be adopted by the federal government, and we're all going to have to live in compliance environments and be ready for those.
And I definitely will say that GDPR is a great start, but depending on the unique cases, you can definitely build on top of that. I don't think that GDPR is the pure minimum or anything. There's definitely a lot more you can do to make sure that you're protecting your data and the guest data as well.
I'd like to ask the audience a question. What's the difference right now fundamentally between the GDPR and the CCPA financially? Anyone have an idea? GDPR has limitations to the financial burden that can be inflicted upon the company that is in violation of it. With the CCPA, it can actually put you out of business. It can take every drop of dollar that you have and any asset that you own as a violation, infringement, and reinforcement or enforcement, which is very powerful, wicked sharp knife. Because, as we all know from ADA compliance issues, data protection issues, it's a very fine line of provability, as we all discussed in these protocol developments. It's just not talking about it, it's acting on it, it's writing it down, it's enforcing it, and then it's recording it so that we have a tangible means of methodology to show that we are taking in effect what we put into place, enforcing what we're putting into place, and and keeping track of our enforcement protocols with it. That's, just wait until the lawyer calls the owner calls the GM calls you. And have that question go down the back of your spine of, hey, we just got tagged for such and such. Can we take Mrs. Smith's data out? Where is it? Or somebody just contacted such and such that shouldn't have that information because that's in our sealed database. And they went over and reached out to them and they're suing us because of violation of data trust and not having these policies in place or these security protocols in place. That's why I say every empty chair here is going to regret not being here. Because they're not going to go back and think that they need to think about these things when at the time it's happening right now, everyone that's in the business and beyond. So for that, horror stories. What are some interesting things that you have come across in your processes that you just had to shake your head and go, really? Or slap the forehead and go, wow, didn't know they would have done that. What are some stories that you have?
So I definitely want to hand it off to Buddy because earlier when we were talking about the social engineering stories, I think it was either Buddy or Brandi that had a great story for that. So
I can give it too, but I think the worst one that I've seen is companies that don't take cybersecurity seriously and some of their protection mechanisms. And one of the things that you have to remember is these are things that you always have to do ahead of time. They're preventative measures that you're taking to protect against these threats and ensure your ability to recover. So one of the most painful ones I was just in was a company that didn't really have a good cybersecurity posture, and they got hit with ransomware. And as it turns out, they had backups, but this was a group called Ryu that's been very active most recently. But they encrypted everything on the network simultaneously, all workstations and all servers. We had backups of the servers, but it still took 2 weeks to get all the workstations back up and running. And they had one dev box on their network that was a dev box. They didn't really care about the data on it, but they had years of development work on this box. And they ended up having to pay a ransom. They had originally set a ransom at, I think it was $231,000, negotiated down to $123,000. So that was one of the nightmarish stories, and that's within the last 30 days.
So I mean, I can think of what could be nightmare stories, especially as we get more in the Internet of Things. And people being recorded in other, again, rabbit hole, but people being recorded in other types of things within the hotel, and if there aren't protocols in place as to how you deal with that information, you're looking at some trouble.
yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that, Brandi. With the IoT world evolving every single day and all the new technology out there, one thing that is very, very intriguing to hotels to implement into their guest rooms for ease of access, and just the cool factor is the smart voice technology. So having Amazon Alexa or Google Home implemented into one of the guest rooms. Now, one thing to remember with that is the manufacturers are creating these devices to be placed in a home, not in a room where there are people coming in and out every single day, changing and just having it be different people. It's made to be tailored to an individual or a family or a few users. And so having a situation where it's just left open and able to be tampered with in a guest room, that's a critical threat to the user and to the hotel as well.
To that end, I don't know if most people are familiar with the fish tank scenario with MGM Studios. Speaking about the Internet of Things, MGM was hacked, and you would think out of Vegas, you look at gold standards of security protocol. We've all watched all the Ocean's 12 movies, so we know it's got to be true. That they have this impenetrable fortress of security protocols, but somebody broke into the MGM back of the house computer systems because the fish tank was remotely controlled for its temperature via the backnet, but it wasn't secured, and somebody found a way through it. This goes back to the mentality that it's not a 15-year-old kid living in the garage doing these things. Some of the other concerns that you see in the industry itself, since we have opportunity to talk a little bit from the Latitude side or the consumer side as well. You mentioned earlier about the identifying of the Wi-Fi being connected to, so that you can't be filched by somebody ghosting a Wi-Fi similar to the hotel. What are some other things you think that from a consumer perspective that hotels can do to help educate their users towards things that would be helpful for them to be more security minded? What are some things from that perspective?
One thing that I definitely advocate for is a reference guide for the guest. So whether it is something that's stationary in the room or handed to the guest when they arrive at the hotel, a reference guide that tells them the features and technology that is in the room, and just giving them a list of things that are there just so that they know that this is there, and also a guide on how to turn it off if they don't want Amazon Alexa listening to them through their entire stay. And so I think that is very important, and just something that every hotel should mention to the guest when they arrive.
Even something as, and we've heard more about this here within the last few weeks, and I'm kind of going outside of the hotel, but just hospitality in general. If you find somebody has left one of those charging devices behind, don't plug your phone into it, okay? Because your information can be stolen that way. So just, again, being aware and mindful of your surroundings, so just that type of thing.
Quick survey, just because there's a small group we get to do this with. How many people rent cars? How many people have gone into a rented car and the Bluetooth was connected to somebody else's phone before you left? It's like, really? Can't you just burn the darn? But you do those things, and then to your point, plugging into a wall is just as easy. It's just as easy to mimic a jack and put it on a wall. As long as you're getting power, you think you're fine, but meanwhile, who knows to what? But we have another example of, if you ever want to test the security of your staff, throw out a bunch of USBs in the lobby or in the parking lot, and see if one of your staffers will walk in and plug it in, either to be helpful or to think they just have a new USB. But meanwhile, lock system, every one of the security agencies did that as a part of their audit process, and to just show how, because they would lock the computer that it was plugged into, and if it blocked the back of the house system, that was their provability factor of the fact that you can get into any system. Quick question. What is your recommendation on password refurbishment? Is it you tell people to do it at will? Do you keep it at a timestamp? Do you force non-repetitive passwords? What are some guidelines that you all individually like to let your clients know, hey, if you're going to do this, do it this way?
So sometimes it can be every 3 months, every 6 months. It really depends on, I guess, the turnover rate of the employees as well. And then in addition to that, if they use password managers, making sure that those password managers have had security assessments done. ISC actually completed a white paper on password managers, and we found that a lot of these password managers were not properly secured, and it was probably worse to put it on there than it would be to just write it down somewhere.
We like to see long passwords, so 12 to 15 characters, just to remember the last 24 passwords, so you can't reuse them in 24 things. But I think the most important thing is not to reuse passwords. So if every place you log in, particularly if it has any importance to you, to use a unique password for that. I think that's one of the most important things.
And make sure that you don't ever hit save your password to anything, because you're putting yourself at risk. Don't do that. When I worked for mental health, we actually had to change our passwords every 3 months. We would always get an email that it is time to update your password, because we were dealing with such sensitive information for HIPAA protocol. And in mental health, if you are found to be within breach of your protocols, you as the individual, not just the company, but you can be held liable, and they will come after you for money.
I think that one other thing that we recommend with passwords is we always recommend two-factor authentication wherever we can use it. And that's either using something like the Google Authenticator or Handbook to use an SMS-type messaging to confirm. If you don't know what two-factor is, that's where you have to have your username and password are the thing that you know, and then your phone or another device is something you have. So it's something you know combined with something you have.
And adding on to that with the passwords, there's different tools that are available online to test the strength of the password. And I can't think of any of them off the top of my head, but if you just Google it, there's definitely different tools that are available to you. And many times they'll tell you exactly how long it will take for someone to decode your password. And just adding a character or adding a symbol into your password will extend that time period significantly. And so that's always something to keep in mind, and utilizing that that tool just to see the strength of your password is also a great way to go about setting those passwords as well.
Can I expand on that a little bit more? As we've done this and gotten more complex with passwords and everything, the malware that's out there now has become better at stealing our passwords as we enter them. So that's why two-factor authentication is something we highly suggest. Where we used to use and hack and brute force attacks is what we do, and where a computer would randomly generate a password to try to use. Now what we're using is stolen credentials with credential stuffing attack to break in. So these are the 500 million passwords that were stolen from Yahoo and LinkedIn and MyFitnessPal and all these other breaches. It's a database of usernames and passwords that are being tried. So don't reuse passwords, use two-factor authentication, and that's how you beat those attacks.
And I'll add to one thing, things like G Suite and other platforms like this now allow you to control the units that you're giving access to. So if you're a small business or you have even Outlook has the ability now that on the two-factor authentication, you actually have control over what the second-factor authentication access is. So when an employee does leave, you shut off their access, they lose their two-factor authentication should they try to retain connectivity and so forth to that. Did you want to add something else, Brandi? I'm sorry, if you want to say something more.
Also, do not take the word password and put dollar signs in it.
That's not a good one? Well, speaking of, okay, here's the $1 million question, because we're at the very end, yes. We're at the very end. What is your greatest suggestion for coming, because life's greatest mystery is passwords for what I use. And, we've heard everything from make a sentence and then slowly change characters to, convert words to, whatever it is. You use the same word for all your secret password questions so that nobody can guess your mother's maiden name because you actually put your mother's maiden name in it, whatever. What are your secret password suggestions? And I'm closing it up, but also with a reminder of what each of you do, if you would, just as a recap to the company you represent and so forth. So what are your secret password suggestions? And again, what your company does, we'll start with Brandi in the conversation.
Oh my goodness, okay. Secret password suggestion. My husband likes to use abbreviations from Grateful Dead songs.
I like that.
Yes, and put special characters in there just to make sure that people can't crack them. Now, what we do again at SurferQuest is we provide secure business center software, guest engagement solutions, and we do the live 24/7, 365 support. We're always updating and making sure that our clients have the best around.
So I'm a big fan of passphrases. If you think of passwords with all these complexity rules, they're really hard to remember. But if you can remember long sentences pretty easily, if you relate them to things that you know or things that you then you can make those minor changes and tweaks to them. And it makes it hard for computers to guess in a brute force attack or something. My company is a network support company, and we do managed services. So we do IT support for small to mid-sized companies, including a lot of hotels and hospitality.
Yeah, one thing you could also do is assigning a phone number to it and keeping the parentheses and the dashes in there, and that makes it super difficult to figure out the password for that as well. So that's something that I've used a couple times before. And if you could store the password in your phone and your contact as a different name, and nobody would be the wiser.
And with that, unless there's somebody frantically raising their hand and they're not, we are done. And thank you so much for taking the time to stay with us the rest of the day. Thank you.